How often have you said this to yourself? Fuck everything. I just want to have a thing of my own. And when I say thing of your own, I'm not talking about some multi-million dollar businesses or the next big tech app that blows the space. I'm talking about small, innocent things, maybe starting a lifestyle brand, maybe pursuing photography, a food truck, things that you genuinely care about, things that are your passion projects. So why don't you act on them? Mainly because of two big things, right? First, fear of failure, fear of judgment. These are big in your head. And as a result, what you end up doing is you spend a lot of time being serious about things that you never wanted to be serious about. And this is actually our story as well. Back in 2019, me and my wife had this innocent idea of starting a food truck, and we wanted to serve pancakes and Indian chai, and that's it. No big deal, right? So we came up with a name, we did our research, we also thought of all the ways that could go wrong. So we looked up certification, we looked up hygiene, we looked up pest control. On paper, everything looked doable. Then came in the finances, and we realized that to be able to run a food truck, a restaurant business, and stay sustainable for 1 to 2 years, we would require at least 300,000 to 500,000 Indian rupees, which is equivalent of 5,000 USD. And we are like, okay, this is the risk we cannot take at this point. And well, what did we do? Nothing, absolutely fucking nothing. So, idea one, execution zero, right? And fast forward to 2024, my wife found herself in the exact same position, but this time it was a lifestyle brand. You see, the Indian buying behavior is changing rapidly, and there's so much love for Indian lifestyle brands now. People are open to trying new things, and we thought to ourselves, well, this is our time. So we did the whole dance again. We did research, we came up with a good name, and we also zeroed down on our products. And then came in the finances. And again, to be able to run a lifestyle brand, the upfront investment is somewhere in the range of 500,000 to 700,000 Indian rupees, which is again more than 7 to 8,000 US dollars. And you're like, holy fucking shit, 6 years down the lane. And we are exactly in the same spot. And this time we had to do something differently. Well, you see, in the last 4 years, we've really gotten better at validating product and business ideas. That's the type of services we provide as well. But all of this is in the tech space. It's simple. Yeah? You have an idea. What we do is we create some mocks, quick prototypes, and test it with real users, and then collect all that data, and then help you make the decision whether this idea is worth your time, money, and effort. Or there's an alternative path as well. We would simply mock up a landing page and run targeted ad campaigns, drive a lot of traffic, and through analytics would help you make the same decision whether there's a lot more interest or a lot less interest to your idea. So this is the tech space, and we've gotten better at it. But how the fuck do you do this when your product is not going to be sold in a virtual setup? It is not a consumable in the digital world. It's a physical product. There's not much information available out there. In fact, go to Google and YouTube and try searching for something along this line, a guide to prototyping a lifestyle brand. How do you validate a lifestyle brand? How do you validate a business potential of a lifestyle brand? And if you search along these lines, you would have almost zero results. So we knew we had to create the recipe by ourselves. And that is why I'm recording this as well, to share the recipe. How did we do it on $1,000 budget? But before we dive deep, I just want to say that the idea is prototype. And deeper down, the idea is of a minimum viable prototype. See, a prototype is something that you can mock and test. When you call it a minimum viable prototype, you have to design an experience where people come and there is monetary exchange. People are going to actually pay for that shit. So how did we do it? Well, first, the concept. It comes from the Pathless Path, a book that has heavily influenced me and my wife. And the book shares this idea of prototyping leaps. Now, what we're about to do is also a leap, and it's very unconventional. And when you try to do something unconventional, there's always this stigma, this fear associated, a fear of failure, fear of judgment, and also a lot of pressure created by those stupid stories that you read, uh, or you come across. That there was this tech couple who left their high paying jobs and created a business of selling organic food and now makes so and so $1 million. And we're like, man, this thing doesn't have that potential, or maybe we are not even sure that we'll make that amount of money. So why do it in the first place? Why not stick to what we have going on currently, which is good enough as well? But there is one thing that is missing in all of this. You see, all these success stories don't start from point A to point B. It's not a linear path. There is something called the messy middle. And if you look and decipher all of these experiments, all of these success stories, sorry, there are experiments that these people conducted to make sure that the risk of executing on something like this is minimized. So it's a structured approach to minimizing risks before you get to that point where your passion project is now a sustaining business. So here's a step-by-step guide of how to create a minimum viable prototype for your business idea. And when I say viable, it is really important for you to understand that viability means people are actually going to pay for your product, your business, or service that you are wanting to validate. So, to be able to do that, the first and foremost important thing you'd have to do is identify what is it that you're going to prototype. So, the intent, the purpose of the prototype has to be very clear in your head. For us, it was making sure that the prototype is designed to give us more clarity about what our products are going to be, who exactly are users, and what is the buying behavior like, and what is the business model that we can leverage to make sure that this is a sustainable thing for us. And there was one more thing as well. You see, we were very clear that we don't want to have a brick and mortar setup, but we still want to interact with our customers in real life. So we wanted to understand the impact, effort, scale of prototyping or executing on a pop-up experience. So this was our prototype. This is how it was defined. For you, think of it like this. In 2 years time, where is it that you see your this small little project going? In 2 years time, where do you want to be with this experiment of yours? And think of 3 to 4 to 5 things that could potentially stop you from reaching there. And of these 3 to 5 things, focus on the 2 to 3 most important things that you need answers for. Once you've identified those, you're going to create a prototype to get answers to those 3 to 5 most burning questions that could stand between a really good future for your business. So, first and foremost, think what the prototype is going to be. Second, once you have the prototype ready, now you're going to think people. Who is it that you're going to test this prototype with? In a digital setup, it's easy to get people looking at your stuff. As I said, you can run targeted ad campaigns, you can have a website ready, you can drive all the traffic to your website, and you can make out whether there's an interest for your product, and people could actually buy that shit as well. But in a physical setup, all you can do is rely on offline marketing. But in our case, offline marketing was time consuming and expensive, and in the time we wanted to pull this off, it was not going to produce a significant amount of results. So what we decided instead is to identify a network with high word of mouth potential. When I say network, think of it like this: who are the 3 to 4 most influential people in your industry or in your vicinity you can get in touch with, who has access to your target customers? So, example, in our case, we come from an area which is densely populated with non-residential Indians and locals with high buying power, and our parents were uh, in this community, are part of this community, and do hold a repo and a bit of influence on this people that we wanted to tap into. So what we did is we created flyers in English and our local language, and we circulated through our parents' social accounts. So as a result, what happened is there were more people who came and experienced our products, interacted with different customers, interacted with us, than we ourselves would have managed to, uh, you know, figure out or manage to bring a lot of people together. So what I'm trying to say is get access to this 2 to 3 influential figures who are considered as authoritative or influential amongst the target group that you are looking to validate your product with, and incentivize them to spread good word about you and your product or your business. That is what you're trying to validate. So second, the network is important, and word of mouth is what you have to rely on. Third, and most important thing is making sure that you have your budget figured out. So now you've got your product, now you got your users as well. Third is your budget. So whatever it is that you have put aside to conduct this experiment, I would insist that you invest 50 to 60% of your total investment on the product itself, the thing that people are actually going to pay for, and 15% of that should go to your branding and marketing activities. I'll get there next, but keep that aside, and everything else is for your logistics, locations, and so on and so forth. But make sure that 50% to 60% of it is uh, allocated to the product. Next is create a minimum viable brand. And when I say minimum viable brand, see, what happens is that when you experience or when you come across a digital product or a fancy tech, what you do is you go to Google, you go to their website eventually, and see the features, look them up, look the team behind it, people behind it, and you make a decision whether you want to buy it or not. But when you come across a lifestyle brand, you don't go to Google, mostly you go to Instagram or Facebook and you look them up. So these are the new engines for lifestyle brands. So what we did in our scenario is we made sure that our social media that we did, it was not for getting a lot of followers or going viral. It was just designed to make sure that whenever someone looks up a Tattva or the Tattva experience, there is something that appears on their feed, and people perceive it as a legit, genuine business, and they're not confused. There is no risk associated with the legitimacy of the business. So create a brand that is minimal and just gives you that authority and credibility for you to execute on this. And if you're thinking post, we did it for 1 month, but you could do it twice or thrice a week. Just make sure that you have a good branding, so a good logo, name, and your brand story there, and that should cover most of your minimum viable branding aspect of it. And finally, I would talk pricing. It's really important to understand pricing, and this is beyond the scope of this video, and I'm not going to go into different types of pricing. But as you're well aware, there's cost-based pricing and there's value-based pricing. Cost-based pricing is uh, you just add a margin to the cost of making something, right? So imagine that the cost of making your product is $50, you add a margin on top of it, and this margin is heavily influenced by the market forces, the competitors, and so on and so forth. And then you come up with a price, and that's what you throw out. And value based pricing is creation of this value, the perceived value in someone's mind, so that their willingness to pay is really, really high. Now, an example of this is, imagine a Ferrari is expensive for you, but someone who's buying a Ferrari and has already paid for it, for them, it's still a bargain, because you see, people perceive value differently, and everything uh, that is valuable to you necessarily doesn't have to be valuable to someone else, and vice versa. So that is pricing. And if you want to understand the buying behavior of your customers, I would say have a very structured approach to pricing your products. So have something that is low, so it breaks the entry barrier. Have something that is a middle tier, and have something which is a high ticket item. So the intent of the high ticket item is to make sure that everything in the middle becomes more cheaper in your user's mind, and that way you get to test a lot of different pricing options as well. And I guess it's really important for you to understand that it's okay if people don't buy your expensive stuff. At least you then know that what is the appetite for your target users to pay for your brand. So I guess that's everything, and I'll just quickly summarize that start with the prototype, the intent of the prototype, the purpose. You have to make sure that you get a deeper understanding of who are your customers, what are the products, and what is the business model going to look like. Second, tap into the network with a high word of mouth potential. Third, come up with a budget. Make sure that 50 to 60% of it is for the core product, the stuff that actually people are going to pay for. Leave 15 to 20% of it for your branding activities. Then create a minimum viable brand. Make sure it's only good enough to create credibility and legitimacy of your existence. And finally, come up with a structured approach to pricing. Make sure that you have a lot of things. It's kind of a value ladder. Create a value ladder of some things being more relatively cheap to something that is expensive, and in between is where you make a lot of margin. And I guess that's everything from our end. Until then, if there are any questions, feel free to ask those in the comment sections, and we'll be happy to give as many answers as possible. Until then, ciao ciao.